Oh, so thanks, Jen, for agreeing to meet with me today.
No worries.
Um, let's start with, so I know that you're an educational psychologist. It would be great to hear, first of all, sort of how you spend your time. I know you've got your foot in two camps, so if you could tell
Yeah.
us a bit about both of them.
Yeah, sure. So I am a local authority educational psychologist. I'm actually a senior educational psychologist, which means that as well as doing the day job as an educational psychologist, I manage a team of psychologists as well. So the thing about being an educational psychologist is your day is never the same. You can be playing with a 3-year-old in the morning and being told to do one by a 15-year-old in the afternoon. Um, each day is very different. So I'm also do some independent work under my own practice.
Yeah,
So what a day could look like is I might have a school visit in the morning. That could be a primary or a secondary school. That could be to do some classroom observations. It could be to do what's called a SEN walk, which is a special educational needs walkthrough that you do with the SENCO to look at best practice. It can
hmm,
be consultations with teachers around specific students. It can be occasionally we've done parent coffee mornings help parents to understand a little bit more. It
yeah,
can be training. So it could be a school has commissioned us to do some training on specific things. It could be, they want some emotion coaching training, or they want training on um, neurodiversity, or they want training on precision teaching. So we negotiate what the school wants from their traded time. Um, it can be individual assessments. It can also be education, health, and care plan needs assessments, which are so education, health, and care plans are a legally binding document that the local authority commissions assessment work for, and then that is used to ensure that the young person's needs are met through the right provision and the right school placement.
okay,
Um, and it can be so that you could be that. I could also be in a preschool watching a 3-year-old who might be nonverbal and is struggling with social interactions. We do things in my local authority called a co-production, where we see the child, but then we meet with parents, nursery staff, and the assessment planning officer, and we co-produce the education, health, and care plan document. Um,
okay.
so yeah,
And
so every day is very varied.
yeah. And just being really clear, sort of for listeners, when you talk about individual assessments, obviously we know each other because you did a
Yeah,
dyslexia assessment for a member of my family.
yeah,
Um, and I'm realizing as I hear this sort of the breadth of what you do that I think my understanding of educational psychology was probably much narrower than it is.
hmm
But just to be really clear, so dyslexia would obviously be something that you would
yeah,
assess for. What
yeah.
might be some of the other things that you quite commonly would be looking at or looking for?
So we might look at whether so dyslexia, absolutely, whether a child might be dyscalcular. We would
Mm-hmm.
also be looking at a child's overall learning style. How do they learn best? Now, assessments can be through observation, they can be through rating scales, they can be through something called dynamic assessment, or they can also be done through formalized cognitive assessments, such as using the Wechsler Intelligence Scale for children, the Wechsler Individual Achievement Tests, things like that. So we look at a big part of what an educational psychologist does is we look at the whole child and we look at the whole profile. So as part of our learning assessments, dyslexia, dyscalculia, we're looking at processing speed. We might be looking at whether a child may be able to generalize information. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes some of our neurodivergent young people can really struggle to generalize information from one situation to another. Um,
Okay.
so we look at that as part of our assessments. We might look at um, whether a child has moderate learning difficulties or severe learning difficulties. We, as part of the assessment as well, it's not just the kind of the numbers on the assessment. We're also looking at the child's approach to learning. We'll identify whether we noted there might be some attention and focus difficulties. Um, you know, although obviously autism or ADHD assessment has to come via medical route, we might pick up on things that we think there might be some social communication needs. So then we would
Yeah.
have a conversation with parents and school about how we move that forward.
Okay. Yeah. And then if we jump backwards through time,
Hmm.
what made you want to be a psychologist?
That's a very interesting question. Interestingly, I took psychology in high school and absolutely hated it, but I had a really rubbish teacher. Um, I was going to go down the law route, and what I wanted to do is work with young offenders. So I wanted to work with young
Right.
people in the legal system. And then when I got to university, I took my first psychology course at university and thought, wow, this isn't anything like what I did before. And actually, why am I waiting until a young person is in the system? Why aren't I doing work with them before to work out why they're struggling?
Yeah.
If you look at our young people who are in the prison system, I think it's something like 75% of them have dyslexia or are neurodivergent in some way. Um,
75%.
yeah, I think that's the
Yeah.
statistics the last time I looked. Um, and also if you look at the statistics as well, because one of my areas of specialism is bereavement and loss and critical incidents. So you look at I think it's, again, the statistic is something like 80% of young people who are in a young offenders institution had been bereaved of a important person in their life in the 2 years prior to them being incarcerated. So I think it was that I thought, why am I waiting until they're in the system? Why aren't I working? Why don't I do something
Mm,
that um, is going to help children and help unpick what's going on for children?
yes. And then what took you into educational psychology? Because it sounds like that could have also taken you into clinical or
Yep.
forensic.
Yep. I
Um,
did look at clinic. I did look at all of them, if I'm honest, when I was looking at which way did I want to go.
yeah.
And I I did like clinical psychology. The thing I didn't like about clinical is it was very one-on-one, and I like the idea of educational where you're in the school setting, you're working
Yeah.
with the schools, you're working with other services, and you're problem solving together to try and unpick what's going on for that child or young person.
Nice. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I can
and I
see
think
that.
for me, I think a big thing, and I've seen it develop over too many years of being an educational psychologist, where we now realize that behavior isn't just behavior. Behavior is a communication tool, and what we
Mm,
need to do is work out what that behavior is communicating for us.
yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so I think I liked it was the fact of working in the education setting, working with schools, helping to work
Mm,
out learning patterns and things like that. So that's why I went into the educational
yeah.
psychology route.
Yeah. And then what was the training process like? Did you train in the States or did you train in the
No, I
UK?
trained in the UK.
Uh-huh.
So when I trained, it was still a master's degree. So you did 2 years of teaching, and then
Hmm.
you did a master's degree. So um, I worked in a language unit, uh, a Key Stage 1 language unit. I also worked in a Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4 unit for children with physical difficulties. And
Right.
I also worked for the Traveller Education Service.
Oh, so really varied.
So I did have a very varied, which stood me in very good stead for when I went into being to go onto the training course as an educational psychologist, because as an educational psychologist, your breadth of work can be 0 to 25. The majority of your work is usually between age 3 and 16, 17. But you can, we have assessments sometimes that come through for 20, 21 year olds, sometimes come through for 2 year olds. It's the work, it is quite a big breadth, and you can't always, some of our educational psychologists have been primary based, some of them have been secondary based, some have been college based. So, you don't always necessarily have maybe the experience in some of the younger ages or the older ages.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So
so,
the masters then was sort of, yeah, teaching
so
supervised
teaching, and then
practice.
yeah, and then a year of on the masters with 2 placements in different local authorities, and then a year of supervised practice as an educational psychologist. Now the process is that there is a requirement of a minimum of 2 years of working with children and young people in some kind of educational setting. So
Right.
sometimes they're TAs, sometimes people do, I mean, people do a whole range of things with children and young people, but it's a minimum of 2 years, and now it's a 3-year doctorate.
Okay. Um, and is there funding in the LA for that, or are people
There,
funding that
excuse me.
themselves?
No, that is funded. So there is a bursary. I
Right.
don't actually know how much it is now, but there is a bursary. And so usually how it works is your first year is very much a mix of uni and maybe some very localized placements in very short blocks of 4 to 6 weeks.
Mhm.
But then years 2 and 3, you are LA based with a local authority for 3 days a week and university either in or working at home 2 days a week.
Okay. So yeah, that sounds much more similar to the clinical training that I did.
I think it
Um,
has kind of gone more down that road now.
yeah. And is it very competitive? Is it difficult for
Yes.
students? Yes.
Yeah, it is very competitive. What we so my local authority now has assistant educational psychologist posts, which we have had for the last 8 or 9 years, which
Right.
gives people who are thinking of going on to, well, the expectation is one with their fixed term contract posts with the expectation that we will support people to apply for the doctoral course.
Yeah.
And our success rate's been pretty high. I would say
Nice.
90% of our assistants get onto a training course
Yeah.
within 2 years of being with us. Because it just gives them it gives them more experience about what the role really is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is very competitive. It's so unfortunately they've eliminated one of the training courses in London, and moved some of the places. There are more places up north, but there still isn't enough places really to train the number of educational psychologists that are needed.
Mm,
But it is very competitive, and it's not
yeah.
unusual to take a couple of years to get through.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of the things we hear is certainly in local authorities of educational psychology services being very stretched.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So yeah,
and
we
would,
definitely could do with more trainees.
yeah. So more trainees, more qualified
Yeah,
ed psychs. And we know it's difficult, don't we, in a lot of areas of the public sector.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I think pretty much throughout people would say, yeah, we need more
yeah,
resource.
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and I feel like that sort of links me into thinking about what some of the most challenging elements of your role would be.
Um, I think we've seen a lot of change in needs. I think we've seen a growing complexity of needs. Um, Obviously, a reduction in the amount of money and resources that's available. Um, I think the one of the big things that changed our profession, and not necessarily for the better, was the introduction of education, health, and care plans in 2014 under the new Code of Practice, because people get hung up on having an education, health, and care plan. They don't think about all the work that goes in before that actually is going to have more of an impact on a young person. So people kind of get stuck on, well, I need that legal document. It's like, but that's not the only way a child with special needs is supported. There are
Right.
many ways that they're supported in schools. They're
Mm,
supported through, individual learning plans, through provision maps, through additional needs plans. There's a lot of support that can be put in place before that. But
mm,
I think because um, it has become more of an emphasis, and obviously we're at the moment waiting for the SEND white paper to come out. So the reforms in SEND white paper, which has been delayed, I think that's raised a lot of anxiety, which has raised a
mhm,
lot of parental anxiety. So I think that definitely a challenge. Um, the number of education, health, and care plan assessment requests is a challenge. All local authorities are not able to work within timescales now. They're all operating some kind of waiting list, which is frustrating for us as educational psychologists. We would never want to hold up an assessment or delay things, but there is only so many people to do the job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I think we don't get to do as much preventative work as we would like to. Um, so
Mm-hmm.
a lot of local authorities operate on a traded and a statutory model. So schools buy in time from the local
Mm-hmm.
authority, from the Educational Psychology Service. And then you have your statutory element, which is the education, health and care plan side. So we're not able to offer as much traded time, so to do that preventative work with schools.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big change I've seen in that over the years. I used to work a lot more with other services and we did a lot more in the way of preventative work. I
Mm-hmm.
think because the system is so stretched and squeezed at the moment, there isn't the opportunities to do as much of that. So I'd say that's probably the frustration at the moment for educational psychologists.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
What are the best bits? What are the bits that you really enjoy?
I still love working with the kids.
Nice.
I love doing assessments and working out not only, because we get a little bit stuck on the child's needs, but also where are their strengths, because actually that's
Mm.
just as important because that's what we're going to build on.
Yeah.
So I still like being able to work with children and young people and unpick what's going on for them.
Yeah.
I really like working with my schools. So as an educational psychologist, you have a patch of schools that you're responsible for. Um, and I really like working with my patch of schools and my Senkos, and my Senkos knowing that they can give me a ring if they need to or drop me an email.
Yeah.
I like the fact that I don't know what a day's, every day is different, so that what one day to the next is never the same.
Yes. Yeah. I think that must be the same across a lot of psychology jobs,
Yeah, I think
because it's
so.
people, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
And I'm
And
thinking
people
for
are
me,
unpredictable.
yeah, even with my kind of ongoing therapy clients, I
Yeah.
never quite know what the week's going to
No,
have brought them.
no, no.
So even
You
someone
never
I
know
know
what
really
they're going to
well,
bring to you that day.
no,
Yeah.
no,
And also you can go into a school and you think you're doing one thing and they hit you, something else urgent has cropped up and you get hit with something else. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, so I am a critical incident responder for my county, which means that if there's a critical incident, which is an event that has an impact on a school community, that can be a death of a student or a member of staff. It can be bomb hoax threat, we've had a shooting threat, we've had an intruder on site. I mean, it is an event that will impact on a significant proportion of the school's community. We go in and we respond. So we are part of a team that will go in and offer support to staff to be able to help them support the students
yeah,
who have been
yeah,
impacted on those. I also do, I am one of the bereavement and loss um, uh, specialists in my service. So I offer training. We offer county-wide training that schools can access.
yeah.
So I also, as difficult as responding to critical incidents is, it's you get to use psychology, and you're getting to support people in a moment of challenge where you do feel you can make an impact.
And it's so important, isn't it? And
Yeah,
I think we probably forget that sometimes. We
yeah,
think of school, that's where you go to learn stuff.
yeah,
But
yeah,
if we think actually kids during term time, they're spending the
yeah,
majority of their waking hours there
yeah,
5 days a week,
yeah,
and anything and everything that affects them.
yeah.
One of my children was unfortunate enough to have a classmate die while they were at primary school, and so
Right.
it was interesting actually being on the other sides of that, and
Yes.
seeing
Yeah.
how well the school were
Yeah.
able to support the kids through
Yeah.
that, because
And
that's
we've
obviously
been,
it's huge for
yeah,
the kids.
massive. And for them it's often, that's not something that normally happens. It's
Mm,
very outside of anything they know. And a lot of what we do really is normalizing, because actually it's okay to feel how you're feeling. That's really, really
yeah.
normal, because a lot of times it's should I be feeling like this? But yeah, I think enjoy is the wrong word. I feel very privileged to be able to do that role.
Yeah, I can really understand that. It, like I said, it just feels so important, doesn't it,
Yeah, yeah,
um, to help people to come through that
yeah,
more easily than they might have done without your
yeah,
support.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. How's your, sorry, sort of jumping around a bit like I
Go
do
for it.
with my questions.
That's fine.
Um, how how's educational psychology been changing since you first got involved with it? And what do you think sort of the future might look like?
That's a very interesting question. Um,
Amazing
I
you
definitely
come up with that.
did she?
She did.
Excellent. I think certainly our understanding of neurodiversity has significantly shifted.
Mm,
In I've been in EP 20 something years, and what our understanding of neurodiversity was when I was a newly qualified EP to what it is now is almost unrecognizable. And particularly
yeah,
our understanding of how autism presents in girls,
yeah,
how
yeah,
ADHD presents in girls, um,
yeah.
how neurodiversity and I think also the impact of sensory needs.
Mm,
Our understanding of that has increased. Um, I think as a profession, we definitely have moved forward in a lot of ways. We've also moved away from just doing bog standard assessments of here's some numbers. It's more, that holistic, what is
yeah,
going on in all aspects of the child's life. And I think that's a big part of what we do as educational psychologists is that holistic view, looking at all the
mm,
parts of what's going on for a child or young person and putting that together. So I think we've moved much more to that kind of way of looking at things.
yeah,
Um, I think the neurodiversity is the massive shift I've seen,
yeah, yeah,
and moving away from it, and also moving away from it all being within child, um, and looking at, that actually environmental factors and things also have a big impact.
yeah, yeah.
What do I see the educational psychologists looking like in the future? That's a very good question. Um, I'm not sure. Um,
Okay.
I think it will
Mm,
depend on what comes from the SEND white paper.
yeah,
Um, I think that will have a massive impact on us as a profession. And if they take us out of the having to be part of statutories all the time, that may free up time, but our local authorities in a place where they'll be able to fund that and schools fund that. I don't know. Um, I think there will always absolutely be a need for educational psychologists because I think
mm,
we're in a unique position where we understand school systems, but we also understand child development,
yeah,
and
yeah,
sometimes the twain don't meet.
yeah.
So I think, there will always be educational psychologists. It will be interesting to see, obviously, with the evolution of local authorities and things like that, what that looks like. So what working for a local authority looks like, I think, may look quite different in the next 10 years, but I don't know how.
Yeah, you're making me want to book in that chat in 10 years' time and reflect on this
Well,
conversation. Maybe we
we'll
should do
schedule
that.
it in. We should.
Yeah. I don't have a 2035 diary yet, but we
No,
can
no.
we can bookmark it. Um, but yeah, thank you. I love those reflections. What would be, we might have covered this, but what's something that people often misunderstand about what you do?
They think that we just do assessments,
Yeah.
and we just whisk a child, and that's all we do. I
Mm,
think also people have a misunderstand what educational psychologists do. I think they um, think we're just more research based around schools. Um,
okay.
so yeah, I think those
Yeah.
probably are the big misunderstandings around the
Yeah.
profession. I don't think people understand the breadth of what an educational psychologist does.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
And
think
it's
that's
not it's not something you hear about as much as maybe clinical psychologists or forensic or, a research psychologist, that perhaps we're not as out there because, we're in the school system and cracking on with it.
yeah. It's something that I'm noticing. So even as a psychologist, I think the last of these conversations I recorded was with a health psychologist.
Okay.
And I thought I had quite a good understanding of what health psychologists do. And I did spend the first 10 minutes or so of the conversation going, oh, as I'm realizing that, yeah, again, the
Yeah.
breadth
Yeah.
was more than I'd thought it was.
Yeah.
So I think this is a really, really useful thing to be highlighting, that, you know, some of
Definitely.
the people watching these videos are
Yeah.
probably less informed than I am. And again, like you say, we're influenced, aren't we, by the
Yeah.
experiences that we've had. And
I
maybe
think
that's the
now,
bit that people hear about, is the
yeah. I
dyslexia
think
assessments, the
and I think
EHCPs.
that's the thing, is dyslexia and EHCPs are the main things people think about, but actually there's a wider role. And I think, when I obviously, with the rise in technology and YouTube and social media and things, there's so much more information out there. When I was deciding which area of psychology to go in, you had to go to the library and read about it. And if you were lucky, you
Yeah,
maybe could chat to somebody in your department about kind of what were the different disciplines of psychology. I mean, I was very lucky. The university I went to in the UK, we had the course tutor, the course director, sorry, had been a senior educational psychologist, and he had taught at UCL, and that helped me to have a much better understanding of what an educational
yeah,
psychologist did.
yeah. No, you're right. It has got easier, hasn't it? Um,
Information's
yeah,
more readily available, I think, than it
yeah,
was when I trained.
yes, yeah.
So,
Same for me. It was
yeah,
paper. It was sort of
yeah,
limited documents, and
yeah.
um, yeah,
And
friends of friends or parents
reading
of
some
friends.
psychology journals, articles, and like, oh, that's what that's about.
Yes, yes. And then, Jen, my last question:
Mhm.
what would your advice be for young people who are interested in potentially becoming a psychologist?
Um, I think do the research around, do spend time looking at what the different disciplines are. Think about your own strengths. Think about kind of the things you're interested in. Because there's no going down a research PhD route. If you're not that way inclined, don't do it.
Mm.
Because you'll just end up thinking, this is not what I wanted to be doing. I
Yeah,
think investing the time before, thinking really carefully about your strengths, what you're interested in, what kind of disciplines you're interested in. I think that's really helpful. I think where you can talk to other psychologists,
yeah,
especially with things like LinkedIn and stuff now, um, you know, the videos that you're doing,
yeah,
use the information that's out there to help you build your understanding, because it might be you think, oh yeah, I definitely want to go down I want to go down a developmental psychology route, and actually when you get down to it, you think, well, actually no, that feeds into educational psychology, and I'd really like to work with schools, or oh, that I could use that as a clinical psychologist. And so I think spending the time and having a think about kind of and playing to your strengths, using your
mm,
strengths is really important.
yeah. Something I think about more these days than I did when I was younger is like the value of ruling things out as well.
Yeah,
You know, you
yeah,
sometimes you
absolutely.
get a bit of an instinctive feel, don't you, that something's not the thing for you.
Yeah,
But maybe leaning into that a little bit, even
yeah,
if all that does is just confirm, no, I'm
yeah,
right, that's not the thing for me. Well,
yeah,
brilliant. At least you know that
yeah,
for sure then.
yeah.
Um,
Absolutely, I agree. I think,
yeah.
it's and just because you think an area, and I didn't think psychology was going to be my area, and yet, I went into it and thought, oh my God, this is totally different to what I'd done at school, and actually, I'm really enjoying this. So,
Yeah.
sometimes those pre-experiences that maybe, didn't go so well, but also don't rule stuff out, because as you said, you there might lean into things maybe you don't like. You might find actually you liked it more than you did, or think, no, absolutely, this isn't for me. And that helps to kind of, but also don't don't rule stuff out just because you don't know about it or you think you might not be interested. Check it out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know it frustrates me how big an influence the teacher can have.
Yes. Yeah.
When people are choosing GCSE or
Yep.
sixth form
Yeah.
subjects.
Yep.
And I get it, I completely understand it.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
And I, yeah.
it's a shame, isn't it, when
Yeah.
a teacher doesn't inspire an interest that another teacher might have.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Thank you, Jen. I'm going to pause the recording there.
Okay.
But thank you for your time. I think that's going to be super helpful for people.